Santa Williams, you can call me. Although my mom used to call me Sam. Not that I ever lived in a haunted house, but my mother did live beside one when she was still a teenager. Other houses on the street also experienced weird occurrences. Beside my mother's home, there used to live a strange family. Whenever I used to ask my mother why they were strange, she just used to shrug and recall how no one saw them out except for the noises. But no one bothered either. But one Halloween night, my mother returned with her little brother. Their father was standing consoling a crying man. In a short aspect, their daughter passed away crafting a pumpkin, some neurological vein bursting, they later told my father. After she held my uncle, my mom saw them taking out a pumpkin covered in blood. The kids went away to distract their minds from the burial, and the father requested my mom's uncle to go and check on the house and family. My mom and dad, who were dating at the time, went with him. My mother had heard that there was a grand piano, and she decided she wanted to play it. My dad was a university student, pursuing a degree in veterinary medicine. As the family welcomes them, my mom's uncle sat down, and she went to play the piano. In the background, she could hear them complaining about weird growling noises coming from the basement. The visibility in the room was low, and it was even difficult to distinguish objects clearly because of the flickering lights casting shadows on the wall. She was playing it when she felt something brushing against her ankles. She searched under the piano, and there was nothing she could find. But as she slowly raised herself, she noticed the pumpkin beside the piano. Its expression was wicked, the eerie glow of its eyes different from those it had earlier. She felt cold, but didn't make anything out of it, considering it was Halloween season. It was normal to have pumpkins. When she started again, she felt hands clasp her legs tightly. It was cold, like the touch of death to their skin. She froze, unable to move, her heart pounding in her chest. Finally, she dashed to the basement door and started calling out for everyone. Outside, her father and her uncle inquired. As Mom explained, she swore the father lost all color on his face. He explained how his non-deceased daughter loved to set the most horrifying pumpkins each year, and how she used to play a trick on her father. When he performed with the piano, she would crawl under the instrument, put her hands on his soles, and set them on the pedals, moving them back and forth. Later, when they came back home, her uncle confessed how the father still had the pumpkin her daughter was found dead with. He kept on saying how the father could not bear to have it removed, even when the girl died. The family also confessed they had seen the pumpkin itself appear to be alive, pulsing with light, inside and out, flashing in time with the movement of the stallion. Starting from that day up till now, my mother never went inside that house again. Every Halloween, she makes it a point to leave a light on the belief that its presence would ward off evil spirits. A few years later, she started the entire neighboring family was found dead with pumpkin pieces in their throats. My wife and I moved into our first home in February, year 2010. This was pretty much evident when we first set our eyes on it. We fell in love with it instantly. It had everything we wanted and more is true. And this is because all went well for the first month. Much of our time was spent painting and decorating, making the room look exactly how we would want it. Then, it all went down the drain. First, it was the small things, such as objects taken upstairs or somehow suddenly moved to different rooms. Me and my wife used to fight a lot over the mismanagement. And the damn noise. One wrong footstep, and somehow the entire house used to start creaking. This was a fairly new house. I had just moved in, so I attributed to this being a normal experience, as most new houses often do. One day, my wife and I were cooking in the kitchen, in the process of preparing food for our evening meal. As mentioned, our stairs are right beside the kitchen door, so any sounds emanating from upstairs could easily be heard in the kitchen. I shut off the faucet, and immediately as we did so, we heard the sound of a cough. Unfortunately, we do not have children, and there was no guests in this house. All the windows had been closed, and there was no sound of television playing. This made me shiver, and felt a cold current running down my spine. The color of my face probably turned pale with fright. I was looking at my wife, and she was also turned pale, and had this kind of look of a person who was so much afraid. It is important to note that an intruder was in our house, and they were in the upper part of the house. I immediately rushed to the kitchen to take the most appropriate knife I could get our hands on. Just my wife alerted the police. I stepped down to the last stair and stood quietly. Hearing the sound of a pop or creak I always used to hear the house make, my hands were trembling and my wife was speaking into the phone, explaining to the 911 officer that we strongly believe that we have a burglar in our house. The police came within a few minutes. Fortunately, they had been patrolling around the area. The officer climbed the stairs slowly while holding his gun tightly. He shouted, "This is the police. Is there anybody up here?" There was still no reply. I was right behind him, walking up the stairs. In the first room, there was a bedroom and a closet. Empty. No one in the half bath either. The last room was my office, where I have my computer. There was no one in the room or the closet. This made me feel like a complete fool, making this officer search the house, and he ended up not finding anything. We proceeded to walk out of the room, and to our astonishment, I was about to explode. There is an attic access in my office closet. The officer pulled the steps down and again shouted, "Is someone there? It is the police." There was no answer. He switched on his flashlight and looked up. Kneeling there in the attic was a man in his 40s, dead looking at him holding a strange pumpkin in his hands. He pulled a gun out and ordered the man to come out and put his hands behind his head. They arrested the man. He did not utter any word the whole time and would not even make eye contact with anyone. He was rather shabby. He had some stains on the clothes he was wearing. My wife and I were freaking out. I don't think either of us has fully gotten over it. The man we detained at the police station that the pumpkin wanted new victims. He said how the pumpkin always keeps the doors open, and therefore he stayed there. After the police arrested the man, my wife and I thought everything would be okay. But weird things still happened in our house. I'd hear footsteps when no one was there, and objects would disappear and reappear in strange places. The creaking of the house got louder, like it was trying to tell us something. One day, I was alone at home when I heard a whisper coming from the attic. I went to check, but there was nobody there. It felt like something was watching me, making my skin crawl. Then while cleaning the attic, we found a creepy pumpkin hidden among the boxes. Its carved face looked twisted and evil, sending shivers down my spine. We realized it must be the source of all the strange happenings. Determined to get rid of it, we threw the pumpkin out, but even after it was gone, the eerie feeling lingered. We couldn't shake the sense of dread that hung over the house. In the end, we decided it was best to leave. We packed up our things and moved to a new home, hoping to leave the haunted memories behind us. As we drove away, I couldn't help but glance back at the old house, wondering if the pumpkin's sinister influence would follow us.